Hello, everybody. I am going to ask that we stay on mute, except for me, and we'll have time for questions after. We got a few more minutes. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm just waiting for folks to join. Let's see, we have a chat. I'll open the chat, make sure we're admitting everybody. Okay. All right, we'll give it another couple minutes. I hope everybody's doing well. Type in the chat where y'all are from, and I'd love to know what everybody is, what your experience level is with fasting. Like, are you a pro or a novice or somewhere in between? Type that in the chat. All right, Delaware novice. All right. Anybody else? How is it in Delaware? It's kind of gloomy today. Wisconsin novice. Woo! Oh, good. I don't mind having pros either, because I mean, I kind of consider myself a pro at this point, but you know, there's always more to learn. So, all right, we got one more minute. I want to start right on time, and this should run about an hour. If it runs over, I don't have my next client until 1:30 Eastern. So I do have an extra buffer if we need it. So I'm here for you. And just stay muted until the end. And if you want, you can type in questions in the chat. I won't necessarily be answering them while I go through the training, but I will kind of scroll through and get to your questions, hopefully, after. All right, a few more. Hello, welcome, welcome. I'm going to, oh, it's 12 on the dot. So just a quick hi. My name is Evelyn from evelynd.com. I am a functional medicine nutritionist and a life coach. I have a very inside out approach to healing and health and weight loss. And I'm here today to talk about flexible fasting. And like I said, it's going to be about an hour, and then I'll have time for questions. Maybe we'll just see how it goes, but I have a buffer if we need it, if you have a lot of questions. And if you want to follow up with me afterwards via email, feel free to do that too. All right, so Macy's got it all set up for recording. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hang on. Here we go. Nope, not that. Get to here. And present. Okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. All right. We've got 3 people in the waiting room. Let me just make sure people can get in. Macy, is that something you can do?
Yeah, can you make me the co-host then?
Okay. All right. 4 people. Let me see. View, admit all. Here we go. All right. Welcome, welcome. We are going to get started. If you have questions along the way, like I said, I will attempt to answer them after, more so than along the way, because I have a lot of material to cover. So today we are going to be talking about flexible fasting, making your fasting approach work for you. So let me just close that. And we'll cover, these are the things we're going to be covering. So first I'm going to just cover fasting basics. I know we've got some novices here. We probably have a few pros as well. But for anybody new to intermittent fasting and fasting in general, I want to just cover the basis so that you have a really good understanding of what this is all about. We know it's trending. I think Dr. Oz talks about it. I've seen TED Talks on it, and I'm really excited about fasting and teaching about fasting because it's such an easy tool. So we're going to talk about the basics. I'm going to talk about the fasting rules versus personalization. So making fasting work for you, for your preferences, for your schedule, for your life, for your body. It's really important to make your fasting approach work for you. I'm going to go over the common approaches to fasting. There are so many approaches, but I'm going to explain some of the common ones. I'm going to talk about the benefits of fasting and also the hormonal potentials, both good and bad, or just things to be cautious of. I'm going to be talking about the flexible fasting mindset. This is the crux of what I really want you to understand and embrace if you do decide that fasting is something you want to start experimenting with. And how to get started or advance your fasting practice if you are more of a pro or on your way to becoming a pro. I'll also talk about intuitive eating and appetite adaptation and how that kind of all works together. And then how to self-assess or troubleshoot, especially if you hit a plateau, say you've been fasting for a while, or and you lost some weight, and then all of a sudden you're not getting the benefits that you had in the beginning. So there's some ways that you can kind of troubleshoot and assess and tweak so that you can make it work for you. All right. So let me move that. Okay, now this is I just posted this on Instagram. This is really important to understand. So I have that inside out approach to health, healing, hormonal balance, and weight loss, right? And fasting, if you see here, it's a tiny but important part of the puzzle, right? So it's not everything. I know there's some proponents that think it's the end all be all. In my experience, the inner work is what matters, right? So understanding your patterns, your relationship with food, your eating kind of behaviors, and fasting can be a great kind of insight, give you that insight into understanding those behaviors even more. So it does, in a way, help with the inner work, because when you're not fasting, which I'll talk about in a second, you're not eating. So if you have a fasting window and some emotional eating kind of episode comes up, maybe some stress, you will be very keenly aware that you are not able to use food to soothe during that fasting window if you choose to stay fasted. So it's a really important tool in terms of cultivating more of that inner work that makes us aware of our emotional eating patterns. But it is a small piece of this overall puzzle of being in balance overall, right? So that's just an important thing. It's not the end all be all. All right, so fasting, guess what? You guys are already fasting, all of you, right? You're already fasting. As long as you're not eating while you're sleeping, you are intermittent fasting. So what we really mean about kind of intentionally intermittent fasting is we have a fasting window, which basically just means there's a period of time where you don't eat. And then you have a feasting window or an eating window, and that's the period of time where you do eat. So intermittent fasting basically means that throughout the day, you have an eating window and a fasting window. And I'm going to go through the various types of intermittent fasting approaches you can experiment with. So that differs from extended day fasting. Extended day fasting is where you fast for longer than a day. Typically, it's about 3 days. You want to really do that under the care of a practitioner that knows you and knows your health issues or challenges. And so, but that is definitely something that's practiced in a lot of religions, in a lot of the fasting community. And it can be something that you work your way up to. And I'll kind of talk more so today about intermittent fasting, but you can also kind of keep in mind that some of these things also apply to extended day fasting if you kind of have the go ahead to experiment with that. I've done some like 3-day fasting. My longest fast was a 92-hour fast. And I try to do that maybe once or twice a year, just as a reset. So that's something that, I'm not really going to go into too much here unless you have questions about it. But today we're really talking about intermittent fasting and making it flexible for you. So, fun fact that I just learned, our eating frequencies, if you're in America, the average American eats 15 to 16 hours a day. That's based on some research. And so between meals, snacking, and grazing, that can be 5 to 8 times a day on average that we're actually eating. And the whole reason why we fast is, and I'm going to go over the benefits, but every time we eat, we are potentially activating an insulin response. So the more frequently we're eating, unless we're eating just pure fat, if we're having protein and carbohydrates within that meal, we are potentially turning on insulin. So the body's producing insulin. And when the body produces insulin in excess, that's where we can get into some metabolic dysfunctions, fat storage, fat gain, fat loss resistance. So eating less frequently and in a smaller eating window is shown to provide all of those metabolic benefits and then some. So I'm going to go over those. When you're designing your personalized, flexible approach to fasting, another thing to keep in mind is our circadian rhythms have a lot to do with our digestive fire, like our ability to better process or metabolize the foods that we're eating. So in ideal terms, now I know everybody's schedule is going to be a little bit different, but you want to eat earlier in the day and avoid eating at night. After the sun goes down, the way our physiology is wired, we are not primed to digest and assimilate food, right? So it's actually better to kind of eat earlier in the day and not late in the day. So that's an important thing to know too. Typically a fast is liquids only, but there is tons of variation here. I'm going to give you my recommendations and what I do and what I work on with my clients. But I was just listening to some practitioners talking about fasting, doing like a 3-day fast for like the winter solstice. And they were doing it with juices, which is definitely not something I would recommend. But I mean, I would consider that really not a true fast, more of like a juice fast, but there's a lot of variation. I guess that's my point here. All right. Sorry, I got to move this stuff out of my screen so I can see here. Okay. Ooh. Okay, well, it looks like my graphics didn't come through. That's okay. So here are the three kind of main categories of fasting. There is the compressed daily window, which is basically you have 2 or 3 meals a day with or without snacks. You might do a 12-hour fasting window and a 12-hour eating window. You might do 14 hours and 10 hours. 16-8 is a very popular one. That's how I started, with a 16-8 window, meaning I would fast for 16 hours and have my eating window be 8 hours. Now I kind of toggle between a 16-8 and 18-6, or I'll even go down to 1 meal a day, which I'll talk about in a sec. So that's basically your compressed daily window. This is the most common in terms of intermittent fasting approaches. There's also a lot of work and research around alternate day fasting. That's where you either have high-low days. So you might have a day where you're just having 1 meal a day, and then you fast for the entire next day, or you just fast 2 or 3 days a week and you eat the other days of the week. So there's alternate day fasting, which also has its benefits, and it kind of depends on your personality and what what feels and works best for your body. And then we have OMAD, and that's 1 meal a day. So this is something that I've been experimenting with over the past year and a half, 2 years. And that's basically where you fast for most of the day, and then you have that 1 meal a day. So like for today, I am still fasted, and I will probably break my fast when I'm done with clients today, maybe around 3:30 or 4. And And then I will have an eating window of maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. So it's anywhere between 1 and 4 hours a day. And so that's something that I've been experimenting with. I like it for a few days during the week. It's not something I do every day, but I know plenty of people that do it every day and have great results. They feel great with it. All right, so what are some of the benefits of fasting? Well, one is it puts you into a state of ketosis. So your body works through its stored glucose and it starts to produce ketones, which is priming the body for using fat for fuel. So it puts you into a state of ketosis. That also improves insulin sensitivity. So I remember earlier I was talking about how when we're eating so frequently, as the standard American's diet usually does, with all kinds of snacks and grazing and just eating around the clock, when we are eating around the clock like that, our body is producing insulin every time. And some people are just more prone to insulin resistance, which means their body produces more and more insulin. It doesn't utilize the glucose efficiently, and it doesn't store the insulin in muscles and the liver. And so that's where we can get into the body then storing the insulin in our fat cells. So fasting can improve your insulin sensitivity. It can also improve your metabolic efficiency. So your basal metabolic rate can kick in at a higher rate, and your human growth hormone also can increase with fasting. And that's kind of the super anti-aging hormone that helps with fat burning and just aging better. Fasting is also anti-inflammatory. The cytokines that are normally produced if we're eating around the clock, especially if we're eating an inflammatory diet, can be improved if we are fasting. So now it's better if you're eating also an anti-inflammatory diet while fasting. That would be my suggestion. But it's good to know that even fasting alone can help reduce inflammation. Fasting provides something, it's called autophagy. And basically what that is it's a cellular clean out. So when you get to a point, it's usually 18 hours. Some of the research points to 16 hours too. But once you definitely have seen talks from different experts about 18 hours, then you get into that cellular autophagy where your body cleans out old proteins, whether that be skin cells, whether that be cancerous cells, or any kind of unused proteins that the body is no longer able to access and utilize. So it's a way to kind of stimulate that autophagy, which helps with aging better and longevity. One of the other benefits of fasting is that it gives the body a digestive rest. So you're not eating, so your digestion takes up a lot of energy. So by not eating within your fasting window, you're giving your gut a nice rest so that it can do other things like autophagy, like reducing inflammation. Just you're not always constantly challenging the body with the digestive process. It can help with detoxification, kind of along the same lines. So as you're eating, your body has to deal with the detoxification of any waste products that are contained in those foods. So by fasting, you can give your liver a break so that it can really get into that detoxification pathway and just set you up for just more, basically healing and detoxification. Now, these last three benefits, I think, are not talked about too much, but I think they just make all the difference in terms of understanding ourselves, right? So one is appetite regulation. So that happens, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. That happens when we are, let's say like the clocks just went back here, right? So we had to turn back the clocks. And so say you're used to eating at 9 a.m. And so then the clocks go back, and then all of a sudden your stomach is starting to feel hungry at 8 a.m. But when you start to practice intermittent fasting or longer fasts, your body starts to regulate and adapt to what you are doing with your eating. So the appetite regulation really helps you get a hold on your hunger. So that to me is just one of the benefits. That also kind of goes along with ketosis, because once you get into ketosis, even if you're not on a ketogenic diet, just through fasting, your body can lower some of its hunger hormones. And so that's a benefit that I don't hear too much about. And here, kind of building on that, fasting helps to increase your connection to your body's signals. Sometimes, especially when the example of the standard American diet, if we're eating around the clock, are we ever hungry? Are we ever experiencing true hunger? Are we letting our bodies understand and feel what satiety feels like? Are we connected to how we're digesting our food when we're eating around the clock? But when you're fasting, you're really starting to dive into like, oh, my body's kind of giving me this signal. I feel satisfied. I feel hunger. And you kind of sit with that hunger and just let it be. All right. And this kind of feeds into the next bullet here. You just have that greater awareness of how you use food to deal, whether that be with emotional eating, stress, boredom, what have you. It helps you to understand your impulsive eating habits if you have them. And a lot of times as women, we kind of have grown up, or meant to, where we're used to using food to kind of feel better. Comfort food exists for a reason, because we use food for comfort. Alcohol can be the same way as well. So my point here with these last few bullets is that intermittent fasting can be your gateway towards cultivating more mindful, intuitive eating, which is, to me, the end all be all in terms of having that kind of body awareness and that skill of mastering your eating and drinking and so forth, and your emotions. All right, some of the hormone potentials. I don't want to say that these are all bad, but you should know, just like exercise, fasting is a hormetic stressor, meaning there's a threshold where it can be too much, right? Just like exercising. I went through a period where I was definitely overtraining and I had hormonal impacts because of that. Fasting can be the same way. So too much stress. So you can see in this curve here, you have a beneficial dose, right? And then there's a point, there's a threshold where you start to exceed that capacity for your unique body. So everybody's different. This is not a one size fits all thing. So once you cross that threshold, now you're getting into it being more of a toxic dose or too much of a stress. And then you'll start to feel perhaps the hormonal impacts of that. So this can affect, and there's lots of studies that show, and that's why a lot of experts will say intermittent fasting isn't good for fertility or hormonal balance. You'll hear a lot of doctors say anybody with adrenal issues shouldn't fast. Anybody with thyroid issues shouldn't fast. And I used to believe that too. Because I listened to these experts, and it wasn't until I worked with my own natural practitioners who said, no, just ease into it. And then when I started to do more of like the mindset work, I realized that it's not that fasting in itself, just like exercise or training, is bad. It's just when everything else is not in balance, that's where it can set you up for hormonal effects that are negative versus positive. It can have also positive effects as well. So, but if your stress bucket is full and you throw in like a forced fast onto it, where you're white knuckling through the clock to try to get your hours of fasting in, what you might experience is this hormonal effect, this metabolic cascade. I'll go through this a little bit more. So your adrenals increase cortisol. Cortisol increases your blood glucose for some people, which can increase your insulin, which then signals fat storage and fat burning versus fat burning. So it stops fat burning. So I have a famous story. I was teaching a class on keto, a live class a couple years ago, and lovely class. I just was having such a good time. And then I forgot to show them how to test their ketones, which you don't have to do, but I was just showing them. So I decided to just use a blood glucose strip. Now I was fasted. I eat a mostly ketogenic diet. Back then I was definitely stricter keto. and my blood glucose was 127, which is a diabetic level. And it wasn't because of my diet, it was because of stress. My blood sugar was raised because I was in a positive stress. I loved the class, I was all pumped up, but I was kind of like activated, right? And so our stress has a profound impact, good or bad, on our metabolism, on our glucose, on our hormones. So my pro tips for you, especially if you're a novice, is go slow. Don't push, don't be too rigid, and listen to your body. And I want to go over this too. Your hormone signaling, for the most part, starts in your brain by how you think. So I'm going to explain that coming up here. So I know this is a complicated diagram, but this kind of shows over here your stress, trauma, sleep, or lack of sleep. These would all be considered stressors. Fasting and overtraining, and or there could be emotional stress, that this all kind of plays into it. So this has, when we are in that heightened state, it affects our autonomic nervous system. So we have the sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and we have the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, or breed and feed, where we're more in that relaxed state. This is all controlled out of the hypothalamus in the brain. So we have our HPA axis, which is our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And that affects our cortisol, which then affects our insulin, our glucose, our insulin, and can affect our thyroid conversion, which affects our metabolism, good or bad, depending on where you are on that hormetic stress curve. And then we have our HPG axis, or O axis, your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, or gonadal axis if you are a male. Same thing. It can lower, too much stress can lower your GnRH, which then can affect your luteinizing hormone, your FSH, your estrogen, your progesterone balance, and that can affect your cycles, how you're going through menopause, or your fertility as well. So types of stress: physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual. But a lot of the stress that we perceive is from our own thoughts and patterns, our beliefs. So we have a lot more say in how we perceive and interpret life as stressful or not through our own thinking. And this is something I teach in my programs and with my clients. So really empowering yourself with controlling your thoughts and understanding, having awareness, first of all, of the thoughts that you are repeating over and over again. I think we have 70,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are repetitive and most of them are negative. So we have a lot of opportunity to observe our thoughts. And then that can then, by intentionally choosing the thoughts that support our desired results, we can then lower our own stress response. So now some physical stresses are just happening. They're happening on the subconscious level. If you have a food or an exposure to a toxin or a pathogen that is stressing out your body, now that's just another thing that your body has to deal with, right? So that's a stressor that you really can't control, but you can control kind of the emotional, mental stress through your own thoughts and just your response, your emotional response, and your feelings, right? So sometimes our feelings are great ways for our body to better understand, like, oh, I don't feel like I'm feeling angry. What thoughts are generating that feeling of anger in my body? That's what you can control. Also, your actions and behaviors. So what you take on, are you kind of that nurturer to everybody, taking care, making sure everybody's needs are being taken care of while you're kind of sinking and drowning? So making sure that you're not taking on too much, if you can at all help it. Making sure that you're taking time for self-care, which isn't necessarily massage and bubble bath, although those are great. It's really just making sure that you are taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally, doing the inner work, making sure that you're taking a nice deep breath. Take one now if you can, right? Nice deep belly breath. And then slowly exhale. That is a form of self-care. And it's also a way to get into that parasympathetic nervous system. versus the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, right? These are all things that can help you handle fasting or any kind of stress better, right? So a lot of this is in our control. So you see all these things here. Another thing, and this kind of goes along with the physical, is what you decide to ingest, whether it's eating things that are toxic for you or inflammatory for you, what you decide to put on your skin and your body, what you decide to have expose yourself in your home. We can't control all of that, but there are some things that we can control, the things that we purchase, the things that we ingest and put on ourselves. So this is where my whole point of sharing this is that for those who are worried that fasting is too stressful and it's not good for your hormones, it's important to know that that level of stress, maybe not 100%, but a lot of that is within your control. It's how you're thinking about fasting. If you go into fasting and be like, oh my gosh, I'm starving, I'm messing up my hormones, well, guess what? It's not going to work for you. But if you go into it like, oh, I'm really curious about this, I'm excited to try this, I'm going to go slow, I'm going to listen to my body and really pay attention and learn what I can from this and grow through it, then you're assuring your trillions of cells that everything's good, right? So, and then you kind of go from there. So that's why I'm sharing this. Really important. This is a big part of my work on nutrition as well, any kind of like healing and weight loss as well. This connects to everything, like in that big puzzle. This is part of the inner work. All right, so the flexible fasting mindset. So what you want, this is kind of what I was getting at. So you want to have what's called an abundance mindset when it comes to fasting. So you want to know and you want to assure your mind, your brain that food is plentiful. Just because you're fasting for an extended amount of time today or tomorrow or whenever you decide to experiment, if you do, um, assuring your body that you are not starving, that food is plentiful, is kind of a way that you can make sure that you're not getting into that stress response. You have gratitude for the food that you have, the access that you have to food, and for your body. I'm using my own stored energy. I use that all the time, especially if I'm feeling hungry, if I'm doing a 1 meal a day, like I'm feeling hunger right now. But I'm just like, my coach at the Life Coach School said, dine in. And it's like, there's plenty here, so it's like, and even if you're super lean, your body still has stores of fat that it can use. Gratitude. Okay, I'm using my own stored energy. This is really good for my body. I'm lowering inflammation. My body benefits from fasting. These are things that you can kind of tell yourself or replace with any thoughts of lack. So this is where we get into, oh, I'm fasting, so I'm going to just pig out later because I fasted all day. So that compensatory eating, watching the clock, that was me in the beginning. I was just like, oh my gosh, I've got 2 more minutes and then I'll be at exactly 16 hours. Don't do that. That was just so setting me up for failure. When you break your fast, eating fast and mindlessly, like you're ravenous, you're in a lack mindset when you're in that state. So you want to take a nice deep breath and kind of go towards the thoughts that are in that abundance mindset. Being disconnected from your satiety signals, okay, I've had enough, like aiming for like that 80% fullness before you really go for that full 100, 120%. And so there's just all kinds of things like making up for lost time. There's not enough food. I need to eat more. Like these are all very primal thoughts that really don't serve us. Don't beat yourself up if you think that way, or if these things come up while you're experimenting with fasting. But just know that that's more of a primal response and not something that's actually real for most people. There's plenty of food. There's always enough are good mantras to tell yourself. And then here's right in the middle of the road, the balanced mindset. So this is where you are always listening to your body. You're curious and you're connected to it. You're not pushing, you're not being too rigid. You're having a flow. But then as you use more of that abundance mindset, self-talk, you can kind of discern, especially like in this example with this picture of this woman, she has a really bad headache. Well, maybe she needs some water. Maybe her electrolytes are low because she's getting into ketosis and her body's shedding water. So hydrate, maybe take some electrolytes, a pinch of salt. These are things I'm going to go into next. So really just making it about observing and assuring yourself that it's okay, but not to push it. It's really finding that balance. And that's kind of where I land most of the time. It's like, I'm always going to honor my body first and foremost, as long as it's anything beyond hunger. Hunger is something that I practice experiencing often because it's not an emergency. We think it is an emergency. It's not. It's natural to experience hunger and to embrace it, actually. All right, so where do you land on the fasting spectrum, right? And there's no judgment if you land on either one, by the way. I have plenty of clients that fall into this left side of the spectrum with a rigid structure. They just do better, and I honor that. I'm more in the middle, as you might guess. And I've been no structure, loosey-goosey. So you can put that in the chat, and just like share where you might fall in this structure. So rigid is kind of like very clean fasting, like, no variation, structured. It's all, and then over on the left, on the right side is nothing. So it's all or nothing. So the rigid person is basically on the all. It's got to be all or I'm doing nothing. So, and then the results can be mixed for the rigid person if their stress isn't balanced, right? So if this rigidity causes more stress, then the results in terms of weight loss and feeling well and feeling the benefits of fasting can be mixed. So it really, the stress is the key. Like, you have to manage your stress. And again, you can do that through your mind, right? And the way that you're thinking. So over on loosey-goosey, you're too sporadic. You're not consistent enough. It's all or nothing. So you're like, I'm just doing nothing. All or nothing usually means nothing for the loosey-goosey folks. Again, it's no judgment, but little to no results usually come from this way of being because it's too inconsistent. What I like here and what I recommend, and I work with clients on, no matter where they fall on the spectrum, is personalizing it. It needs to be a sustainable approach, right? So you're coming at it through empowerment versus I can't, right? So it's a huge and yet very subtle difference in energy and in terms of how your brain is working and processing and thinking about your process, right? So you're not 100% and you're not zero. You're maybe 80-20. You're maybe 90-10, right? So you experiment. Maybe you can get away with being 80-20 or even 70-30. And your results will determine whether or not that's working for you. And if not, try 80-20, try 90-10, right? So it's really putting you in the driver's seat of your fasting experience versus listening to all the experts and the rules, including me, in terms of like how you need to approach this. It's not about that. It's about, will this work for you? I don't know how I got a little squiggle here. I don't know if I did that, but and more of my images aren't coming through, but that's okay. So getting started or advancing. So even if you are a seasoned faster, intermittent faster, say you're doing a 16-8, if you want to make it to 18-6 or try some OMAD days where you're doing one meal a day, just go slow, right? So right now where I'm landing for myself is I kind of flex between 16-8 and 18-6. I'm rarely going below 16-8 in terms of my fasting window. Sometimes I am, if it's like a social thing or going out to breakfast or brunch or dinner late the night before. So just go slow, right? Because the most important thing is that you're not perceiving your fasting as stress. Now, I guess in that regard, you could go push it further, faster. But again, just make sure you're perceiving the process as a positive, not as anything that signals starvation or something's going wrong, right? So your power here is in how you're thinking. So yeah, check in with mindset and body. be positive and very patient about it. And it might help to try one of the phone apps. So I use Life. It has even a social component. I've used Zero. They're all good. It just helps you kind of understand, like I like Life app. It's a smartphone app on, I think it's on Apple and Android, um, where it at every kind of, I definitely use it for extended fasting. I don't use it for every day because I'm like, this is just how I live now. But when I do extended fasting, it'll tell you, like, in different increments what your body's doing, and it links to the actual research, which my nerd brain loves. So those apps are kind of fun, and they also have, like I said, a community aspect. Okay, avoiding excessive carbs. This is important for a lot of people. Now, some people can have a higher carb diet, maybe plant-based diet, and do really well with fasting just because the way that their body has adapted. But if you and their whole insulin situation, their insulin signaling situation, but it's easier to fast, I'll tell you this, if you're not eating a lot of carbs, carbohydrates, meaning like refined carbohydrates, or even some of the real food carbohydrates like fruit and starches. So it's easier to fast longer if you, the day before, if you are keeping it relatively on the lower carb side, or moderate carb even. So moderate amounts of real food sources of carbohydrates would be ideal. So maybe a piece of fruit, maybe some rice or something like that is fine, but you wouldn't want to have like cereal in the morning and then a sandwich and then pasta for dinner and then try to fast the next day for any length of, extended period of time. So try that. Try to keep your ingestion of nutrition more balanced, with a balance of real food carbohydrates if possible. That'll just make your fasting easier. So you have to find your unique carbohydrate tolerance. Everybody is different. So I don't want to be one size fits all, but I have found through experience that the day after, when you've had more carbohydrates, you feel more hunger. And that's just because of our physiology, right? So our blood sugar has then, when you're having more carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up and down. And so what comes up must go down, and then it just wants to go up again. Whereas if you're doing more of a balance, maybe more protein, non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of fat, and a little bit of carbohydrate, your body will be in a lot more of a state of balance. So just something to keep in mind. Like I said, be consistent, but flexible, right? So aim for 80-20, see if that works for you for the results you want. Maybe 90-10, maybe you need to be 95-5. I don't know, maybe 70-30, right? So it doesn't, it's not a one size fits all. There's so many different variables, and there's your unique life and your genetics, and there's so many other things involved that will impact your level of success and when you bump it up against the results that you want. So you want to think, can I make this a lifestyle versus something that you're doing temporary? Because if you're doing it temporary, you're going to stop doing it. And that means whatever results you got before will just come right back, right? So you'll just end up right back if you don't have the mindset of, I'm going to make this a lifestyle, right? And also, just disclaimer, make sure before you embark on fasting that you are consulting with your healthcare practitioner before doing so. That's important. Even I did that, and I'm a healthcare practitioner. All right, so getting started or advancing continued. Clean fasting versus fasting with, say, fat, like an MCT oil or like a bulletproof coffee or even a sweetener. Now, there are some experts that are like, it must be clean fasting or don't even bother. And I found for myself that that was not true. So experiment. And I did the experiment. I took out my MCT oil and stevia, and I use a unsweetened coconut creamer for over a month. And I actually tested my glucose and ketones too, because I was just really curious, because this was something that I was hearing over and over again in the fasting community. And no difference in how I felt, no difference in my cravings, no difference in my weight, up or down. I didn't lose more weight doing that, and I didn't gain more weight. My appetite was stable. It really made no difference. The only thing is when I was just drinking black coffee and water and tea with no sweeteners or creamer or MCT oil, is I missed it. But it doesn't really matter one way or the other, because I totally could have adapted to it if I wanted to. But the way that I landed is I'm adding it in. It doesn't make a big difference. It gives me that pleasure I want. It's just a little bit of pleasure, and it doesn't have any negative impacts for me. Now, for some people, I'm absolutely sure that's true, that adding fat or stevia or monk fruit or creamer to your coffee might impact your results and your and how you feel and your hunger, through your fasting. So don't take my word for it. Don't do what I do. Experiment for yourself, right? So your results and your own body's biofeedback will tell you. Like I said, avoid carbs before the day before your fast, but also avoid carbs during the fast. Even though, like I said, I was listening to a health expert talking about fasting and he was doing it with juices. That's carbohydrates to me to get the benefits of the insulin sensitivity and the weight loss. Having a juice fast doesn't make sense physiologically. But again, like that's their version of it, and that's okay. You got to make it personalized for you. Another thing a lot of people do is they will put collagen in their coffee or fast with bone broth. That's totally fine. The only thing is when you're ingesting those amino acids, those proteins, your body will not have any incentive to tap into that autophagy, which you may not care about. So that's something I like to consider. So I avoid protein when I'm fasting, right? So I will not do, even for an extended fast, I don't do a bone broth fast. I don't do collagen because I want the autophagy benefits of that cellular clean out, which is good for your skin so that we age better. I want those benefits. So I am avoiding protein myself. That's my own choice. So you got to experiment and figure out what works for you. Okay, this next one, I don't know where these red squiggles are coming from, but they're kind of cute. Hydrate and electrolytes. This is so important, especially when you're fasting. Also, I teach this with my keto people as well. So you have to hydrate, one, because you are going into that state of ketosis, and that means that your body will be shedding water. That's why a lot of people lose weight fairly quickly on keto at first, because they're doing that cellular shift from glucose or sugar burning into ketones or fat burning. So the body, as it's shedding that cellular water, with it goes your electrolytes. So either a pinch of salt under the tongue or an electrolyte supplement that doesn't have any carbohydrates or protein in it or fat or anything. So just like either a pill supplement or a powder supplement, that might be something that you want to add. But I use salt. I do have electrolytes. I don't think I've touched them in a year. So my body's adapted to it. It seems fine. So you just kind of have to gauge what works for you. And I talked about circadian rhythms. That's important. It's best to stop eating at night. However, if you're working, say, third shift, or you have an active social life, even these days, I don't know who, but let's just say normally your family eats dinner later. It's not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of. Your digestive fire is higher midday through the early afternoon. It's lower when the sun goes down, right? So what I will do is I will usually break my fast personally around 11 to 1. Like today, it's going to probably be 4. So I'm not taking advantage of that morning digestive fire, but the afternoon is where my digestive fire is at its peak. So, so just keep in mind the circadian rhythms. If you have the choice, I would stop eating at night. That's like kind of a low hanging fruit type of deal, no brainer, if you can, if it works for your life. Again, we're making it sustainable. All right, I had a feeling these wouldn't come through. There were more images here, but anyways, becoming an intuitive eater while allowing for that appetite adaptation. So research does show that it takes about 3 days for hormonal adaptation for your appetite to adjust to the changes that you're making. So that's something to just keep in mind. So you're going to experience hunger. If you're used to having breakfast at 8 a.m. every day and you're deciding to have breakfast at 10 a.m. now, you're going to feel hunger. Your stomach's going to rumble. So just normalizing that hunger is okay, right? It's not like a permanent hunger. It's just a few hours, and that your body has plenty on board. So tapping into that abundance mindset when hunger kicks in versus like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, I need to eat right away. Right now, unless you have like hypoglycemia, like diagnosed hypoglycemia, or for some reason your healthcare practitioner doesn't want you to do this. So that's why it's important to check in with your practitioners. So, so if you have a physiological condition, then maybe you do need to eat, right? And not it's beyond hunger. It's more glucose dysregulation or some medical thing that's going on with you, some physical thing that's going on with you. So that's important. Remember that more stress equals more of a hormonal impact, those hormones that we talked about earlier. And just like start to notice how food and eating fills your life, right? I noticed this when I did that extended day fast. It was 92 hours. I really noticed kind of an empty feeling, and not just physical. I felt kind of depressed that I wasn't eating. And it really, I journaled through it, like, and it was just kind of like such an interesting connection I was making, that what a role food was playing in my life on the day to day. Even though I practice intermittent fasting all the time and I've done extended fasting, for some reason, I was really sitting with that experience of like a little bit of a blah feeling from not eating. So it's just an important thing, kind of helps you to break free of any, or be aware of, and then eventually maybe break free of any emotional eating patterns, which I think we all have to some extent. Take full ownership for your choices without judging yourself. So own it, but don't beat yourself up about it. So if you aren't like always successful with fasting, or if you eat ravenously when you break your fast, don't beat yourself up. Don't say, oh my gosh, this isn't for me. Just start to sit back and say, okay, what's going on? How can I slow down? How can I take a few breaths and talk to myself about how food is coming? I'm going to enjoy this slowly and pleasurably. It takes practice. So own it as a practice. Own you messing up once in a while, as it's just going to happen probably, and don't judge yourself for it. So see the opportunity, breathe, slow down, observe, cultivate that awareness. All right, assessing and troubleshooting. Sorry about the visuals and these squiggles right here. This is how you can, some of the things you can do to figure out, is this working for me or not, right? So your biofeedback is basically your body's way of communicating to you. So it could be a headache, it could be symptoms. And once you've ruled out stress and hydration and getting enough sleep the next day, maybe not having too many carbs the night before or day before, that's where you can kind of assess, like, is this actually working for me? Can I make this a lifestyle? So you listen to your body, and then you also look at your results. If you're working on weight loss, or you're working on healing or reversing some symptoms that you're experiencing, maybe some hormonal imbalances, maybe hot flashes, whatever it is you're going through, are you getting better? Are you getting to the results that you want? Are your clothes fitting better? Are you feeling good in your body? And if not, what do you need to change, right? So your results are telling you that something you're doing may or may not be working for you. Also, ask yourself, can I make this a lifestyle? Can I see myself doing this for the long term, right? Getting out of the diet cycle, that diet mindset, and into, I need to make this work for me. I need to embrace this as a lifestyle. Now, if you hit a plateau, what I would suggest is you can adjust your fasting window. So you can either make it longer or shorter. You can make sure that your foods, your macros are in balance, your portions. And are you having too many carbs, too much fat? Are you having enough protein? Where's your non-starchy vegetables? Like finding out if there's some tweaks that you can make there, you know. This is where, you know, I do a lot of troubleshooting with my clients as well. And like I said before, making sure that your sleep and your stress your lifestyle, what you're taking on, all that stuff needs to be in balance, or else it will affect your hormones, and that will affect your appetite, your satiety, your cravings, your hormones, how you feel, and your results. So it's really important to kind of look at that. So just really embrace the empowered mindset, be curious versus making it this tight, rigid, stressful experience. That will never work. You might as well not try. If you're not able to break out of that way of thinking about fasting, then it probably won't work for you, right? So there's some mindset work, inner work that needs to be happening. And also, I should just say this, fasting's not for everybody. So I have plenty of people who do wonderful without fasting. So it's not like, oh no, I'm failing at life if I don't fast. I've heard people say that, like, oh, I can't do keto. It's like, I like my carbs. Don't do keto, right? So it's not about that. It's about you. That's what's important. All right. All right. So if you want to experiment with either longer intermittent fasting or even extended day fasting, just like I am today. I'm doing my one meal a day, OMAD, it's called, because I'm busy all day. I had clients, I have this training, busy all day. So it's easy for me to do a one meal a day today. Stay hydrated. Make sure you are drinking your drinks and staying hydrated. Watch your mindset. I can't say that enough. And again, be open and curious and tuned into your body versus panicking, right? So I've said this over and over again, so I won't keep going on it. All right. If you want more support, especially through the holidays, I just want to throw this out here and then we'll get to questions. It's the Holiday Mastery. If you might have gotten my email this week, feel free to jump into that. It's under $50. You get my whole nutrition framework. There's a fasting component to it. There's a Facebook group. You can jump in on it. I'll post that. Well, there's the link, but I'll post that in the chat when I get to the chat. All right, let me go to questions. Wow, that was fast. All right, I'm going to stop share. All right, let me check out the fast. Okay, and I'm going to put the link in here too, unless, okay, that should work if you're interested in checking out Holiday Mastery. And also I should tease, I'm going to have another training about emotional eating, intentional indulging, another training in January. So stay with me for that. You'll see, if you're on my email, you'll get all that. So, all right, let me just go through some of the questions. Okay, yeah, okay. Heard that extended fasting caused constipation. Is that true? Well, anything is true. If somebody leans towards constipation, obviously eating less often might exacerbate it, but I wouldn't blame fasting for it. I would say that it could be the nutrient and the fiber content in when you are actually eating. Now, it's normal. Like, I know when I was doing that extended fast, it was with a group. It was kind of spiritual, and we did meditation and all that stuff. It was great. There were a couple people that reported constipation, and it kind of makes sense because you're not eating anything. So there's nothing, I wouldn't even consider that constipation. It's just there's nothing to eliminate, right? So at that point, you might not be going to number two because there's no food coming in, right? And your body is used and already eliminated everything it needed to eliminate. So it's not like that uncomfortable constipation where there's stool in the colon and it's not coming out. So that's important. So fiber, water, and also making sure that those electrolytes are in balance. That would be the things that I would look out for. And just, making sure that you're getting a lot of that fiber from like non-starchy vegetables and those kinds of things if you tolerate them. Oh, will taking paracetamol break my fast? As long as it's not sweetened, that's a great point though too that I'll build off of. As long as it's not sweetened or has protein in it, it should be fine. So one of the challenges with fasting is if you're taking supplements like mineral supplements, like zinc, like a lot of people are probably taking extra zinc these days for immune health, you will probably feel nauseous. So if you're taking iron, of course, a lot of the minerals will make you feel nauseous without food. So what I will, like today, when I break my fast, I'm going to take all my supplements at like whenever that is with my meal. So that's another thing. So I pulse my supplements. I do take my medication every day. I'm on a thyroid medication. That doesn't affect you. You're supposed to take that fasted anyway. So some medications do require food. So you just have to kind of work with your practitioner to make sure that is that from a food or supplement perspective that you are taking it the right way. Now, because I break my fast with MCT oil, I am getting a little bit of food through that small dose of MCT oil. So I could take my supplements then if I wanted to. Let's see. After doing IF for 2 months, I'm noticing my period has been getting delayed. Is this normal? Well, it's not normal because it could be a sign that it's too stressful for your body. Now, it could be too stressful for your body because of the way you're thinking or the way that your subconscious physiology is perceiving the fasting. So what I would do is probably slow down if you're kind of pushing the intermittent fasting a little bit too much, and see if it can normalize. Now when we get into a place where we're in ketosis or metabolic flexibility, where we're kind of in ketosis and we're burning glucose, so we've got that's kind of where I live these days. But when we get into that ketosis, there can be hormonal shifts. So it's a matter of, are you okay with that? Or is that making you worried? And also whatever your practitioners say. I've been doing OMAD for over a month, but I'm noticing now that I get hungry as soon as I wake up and sometimes have intense cravings. What tweaks can I make? Well, make sure that your meal, if you're doing one meal a day, that meal that you break your fast with is substantial enough so that it's got a good mix of protein, enough protein, right? So if you're only doing one meal a day, 30 grams of protein isn't really enough for us to kind of build muscle and to sustain our muscle mass. We need more than that. Ideally somewhere around 70 to 100 grams at least. And then if you're strength training, you're going to need more. So you might want to look at the composition of your meal. If it is higher in carbohydrates, those cravings would be expected. So kind of playing around with that. Also, if it's just, is there more stress going on? Right? So it's a stressful time, even though it's like happy stress with the holidays, but then the world is kind of stressful right now. If some like kids are home and everything's up in the air. So it might not be the fasting itself. It could be the combination of stress. So, oh, you're welcome, Amy. Great to see you. All right. Oh, the apps are Life and Zero on iOS and I think Android too. Thanks, Crystal. Because false high cholesterol, how do I prepare for okay, great question. I've read that IF could cause a false high cholesterol result. How do I prepare for and adjust my fasting schedule before an annual physical? Well, again, that's going to be very genetic dependent as well. So if you have hypo or hypercholesterolemia in your family, then yeah, it could be not a great test result if you are in ketosis, if you're eating more like saturated fat. So what I would do is have a very clean diet before, probably a few days before I'm getting tested. So lots of non-starchy vegetables, not too much saturated fat, making sure the carbohydrates, like the starches and the fruits, are on the low side, especially because you want those triglycerides to be low. That's really the number that I look for, is high triglycerides. That's what we want low. And that's usually a sign that there's too much stress or too many carbohydrates. So I'd say a very clean approach to eating, very balanced, lower on the carbohydrates, lots of they'll want to put you on a statin when really there's no risk to it. So you have to kind of do your own research or work with a practitioner that can help you discern whether or not you should be concerned. MTP oil, sorry, it's MTC oil. And no, MCT oil. It is Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. It's derived from coconut oil. It's M as in Mary, C as in coconut. Oh, medium chain triglycerides. Duh. Yeah, it's a medium chain triglycerides. That is something that helps metabolically. It's something you can put in your coffee. You kind of blend it with a little frother, and it just helps me extend my fast effortlessly. Is there an electrolyte supplement? Yeah, there's tons. One, if you want sweetened powder, I like Ultima, which you can find anywhere. I sell some as well that are like unsweetened. I have drops, I have capsules, but yeah, if you want to try Ultima, like for a flavored one, but if you don't want the flavored one, there's one called Trace Minerals that's pretty good. So is hot lemon water okay during IF? Will that make autophagy not happen? Well, experiment, not autophagy per se, because it's not really a protein, but no, so I would totally do lemon water. It's as long as you're not doing like cups and cups of lemon juice, a wedge of lemon, little squeeze of lemon won't tip the scales in terms of autophagy or even really insulin, but experiment. It might for some people. So that's where a lot of clean fasting people, a lot of the experts that insist on clean fasting, they will say no lemon, no cinnamon, no this, no nothing but black coffee, black tea, water. I'm not saying they're not right. I'm saying that's something that I have tested. It doesn't affect me negatively at all, including lemon, because I'll do that too. Great question. I stopped fasting and I'm struggling to go the distance. I get frustrated when I can't reach my goal fast. I know. Let it go. Let it go and just keep trying. So again, it's kind of that mindset of like rigidity and pushing that basically it's like what you think about, you bring about. So if you can just kind of forget about the fasting and just let the day unfold, get busy with the project, or just embrace it, then you'll find that you'll get through it. You'll do better. But the more we're looking at like, it's not happening, the more we're going to experience it not happening. That's how powerful our brains are. So work on that mindset level. That's a lot of what I teach. Being vegan, my meal prior to fast has carbs since that's where my protein came in. Any suggestions on a vegan meal prior to a fast? Well, so one, if you're doing well with like insulin sensitivity as a vegan, then you probably have good insulin signaling where you don't really have to worry too much. So what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't do like pasta or anything carby, especially for that last meal of the day before you're going into a fast the following day. I would do things like I like hemp. I like some of the vegan protein powders. I don't love soy, but organic, non-GMO tempeh, fermented soy would be something that's pretty high in protein. Beans are fine too, because again, they're packaged with starch, but they have protein too. So, and then just also perhaps making sure you have enough, but not too much fat at that meal. That might help as well. So lots of non-starchy veggies and just those more pure protein sources that are vegan, like either the protein powder, hemp seeds are a great source, as well as some of the fermented soy. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. Oh my goodness. All right. I think I got all the questions. Anyone else before I wrap up? All right. So yeah, some of the recording went weird with the images not coming through and then some scribbles, but I think you get the gist, and we will have a replay for everybody. We'll see what we can edit out and fix. And so great to see you too, Amy. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Macy, for everything. Bye, everyone. I'm going to wrap up. And if you need anything, let me, oh, hang on, one more message. Awesome. Oh, thank you, Joan. All right. So again, if you want to take advantage of Holiday Mastery, that is the link right there. We'll send it out in an email, and stay tuned for January's class about emotional eating and intentional indulging. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.